Hello and welcome to Leon County Today with Sheriff Walt McNeil. Sheriff, good to be back in the seats here.
It is absolutely great to be back in the seat and to talk about some things that I hope are on the minds of all our citizens out there, how we can continue to work to keep our community safe. I'm reminded we're starting the summer months right now, and school's out and kids are about. And so we need to talk about how we can make sure that during these intervening times that every citizen's out there is doing everything he or she can to keep our community safe.
Absolutely, and we're specifically talking about scams. And you know, it's one of those topics where everybody thinks, oh, it'll never happen to me, or oh, I'm smarter than that, I wouldn't fall for it. But you know, these scammers are becoming more and more sophisticated on how they make these pitches.
Hey, these people make a living at this and they want to get monies out of your pocket. So we've got to make sure that we're focused. Again, they take advantage of every opportunity. They go to our heartstrings. Usually they're going to talk about a family issue, an emergency that's taken place, and in some situations they're just very good at what they do, and they make it sound like a legitimate business when in fact it's a scam. That's why this show today is so important to our citizens out there to understand what's going on and not become a victim.
Absolutely, and our investigators are every day digging into these issues and following the paper trails. But sometimes these scam artists aren't even, we're not talking local people. A lot of times these are international.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at the one from Africa. I mean, the one that calls and it's got an accent and everything else, and people fall for it. I mean, knowing that this person, but again, it's that heartstring thing when they talk about it's your child, your brother, your mother, or someone like that, and then we take the bait, and then all the money's gone. And quite honestly, it's very difficult for us in law enforcement to get those dollars back, particularly when we're talking about international type crime. So today's program is really important.
Yeah, a lot of great information. We're going to talk today about some of those specific scams and then taking a look at how you can be really proactive in this, because there are some red flags that are there.
We've got Detective Pilkanis who's going to be here today, and she's going to talk about these scam artists and how they're so successful in our community. But she's also going to talk about how we can avoid being the victim. That's what's important here today.
That is. So you're going to want to stick around today. We're going to talk about some specific scams, particularly a rental scam that's happening right now, and dig into some others. So be sure to stick around. But first, let's check in with Jimmy Goodman with our Crime Tip Tuesday.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jimmy Goodman with the Leon County Sheriff's Office, and this is your Crime Tip Tuesday. How to protect yourself when walking alone. Time's changing again. A lot of people are waking up early in the morning to get their exercise before they go to work. Here's a few tips to make sure you're safe. Avoid the dark, vacant, and deserted areas, and use well-lit, well-traveled routes. Avoid the dark hours if you can. Always carry a flashlight with you and your cell phone. Dress in reflective clothing and comfortable shoes which will not hamper movement. If you think you're in trouble, move away from that person or that threat if possible. Join any group of people nearby. If they're across the street or in front of you, increase your pace. Have a great week. Be safe out there.
Welcome back. Joining me now is LCSO Financial Crimes Detective Mary Pilkanis, talking about a scam that more and more victims are falling for. Mary, talk about what we're seeing out there in terms of rental scams.
So I'm no housing market expert by any means. But as everyone knows, the housing market is atrocious right now. We have, houses that are going on the market, they're being sold immediately, and people aren't being able to afford them. So people more often are looking to rent properties. And now people see this trend and they say, oh, I can make a quick buck by offering a rental property that's not actually for rent.
Mary, how is the shortage of housing out there impacting potential renters?
So what's happening is that people, when they're getting away from buying properties, are going to rentals, right? So they're desperately looking for rentals, and rentals are also going quickly just like houses are. So they're getting kind of desperate, and that's where the desperation and that's where the scammers come in.
Now you talk about the scammers. What are the types of scam jobs that are taking place out there on our citizens?
So what they'll do is they'll find a house that's either been recently sold, or that is currently on the market to be sold, or it's vacant, or it legitimately is for rent, and they'll create their own post for it, either on Craigslist or Zillow or Trulia or insert any number of realtor websites, and they'll advertise it for rent, and you reach out to the person. They'll usually ask for an application fee and have you fill out an application with all your biographical information, And then once your application is approved, then they'll ask for a first month or a pet deposit or a last month, first month, and then you send them money, and then they never hear from you again. You never hear from them again.
So it's an application fee that they're capturing the money from you on, and then taking advantage of you. How many of our citizens are being impacted by these scams?
So far in the past 2 weeks, we've received 3 complaints about the same address.
The same address? So Mary, what are the victims saying to us about these scams that are taking place in our community?
So they've all said that they have found them, like I said earlier, on legitimate websites that offer houses for sale or for rent. They have all been in contact with the same poster who is posing as the owner. The person that they think they're speaking to is the owner. The person listed is actually the legitimate former owner of the house. And all this information is public record. You go on the property appraiser's website and find out house information, who sold it and who bought it. So that's where they got the name from. But when they reach out via email and then send money, it's going to a different person, and then the email address is a different name, and the person that receiving the money is a different name.
Now, are these scammers, do we know if they're local scammers or if it's international, or exactly what's the makeup of the suspects out there in our community?
So right now we're still working on the investigation. It's still open. Usually in these type of scams and on any other scams that are not local, it's usually people that don't live here locally in Tallahassee. They're usually elsewhere in the United States, and then we also have international ones as well. I have yet to find, in my 2.5 years of doing this, I have yet to find like a legitimate local person.
Are there situations where a person actually rents the property, him or herself, and then tries to present that property as though and get the application fee and abscond with it? Have we had some of those take place here?
No, we haven't had that. The complaints that we've gotten for this one and are similar to the ones that we got a few months ago, where it was a different property here in Tallahassee, but it was the same situation. The house was vacant, it was for sale, and then they listed it as for rent.
So that's a bait and switch. They indicate they've got this property, but they actually aren't advertising the property that they're actually trying to get you to rent.
Yes.
I tell you, I want to commend you and our staff for the great job you're doing out there. This is an emerging crime in our community, and it's good to see that we've got detectives like yourself ahead of the game, trying to make sure we get these people off our streets and locked up. So thank you. Coming up next, red flags you should be looking for, and the other scams that scammers are hoping you'll fall for. Stay tuned. We're back with LCSO Financial Crimes Detective Mary Pilkanis. Mary, we've been talking about how scammers out there are targeting our citizens in this market about rentals. What should our citizens be looking for, and what are some of the red flags?
So just like any other scam, a lot of the red flags tend to be pretty commonly seen across all the scams. So you're looking for grammatical errors, egregious English errors. I would do your due diligence and put the address into a Google search, see if it's listed for rent or for sale on any other websites, or if anyone has made any complaints online about that property. I would ask the person to see it in person, to do a tour of the house. Because if it's a legitimate person, they shouldn't have any issue showing you around the property that you're potentially going to rent. Right. A lot of times if you ask to see the property, they'll say, oh, there's a bunch of people in line to get it, like get it now, secure it now. They put that pressure on you to give the money. You give the money because you don't want to lose the property.
Right, right.
So, and then, they never heard from again.
Yeah, take advantage of the opportunity they present to you as an emergency, so you act on that emergency situation. We got to make sure our folks don't do that. Are there other popular scams to defraud, and what are you seeing right now?
Yes, and unfortunately, we receive complaints about different types of scams every day. So in addition to this current uptick in this rental scam, our popular one that has just now resurfaced is where people are receiving phone calls from someone pretending to be an investigator with our department, and they tell them that they have jury duty or that they have an outstanding warrant. And then they're asking people to send them money to get rid of the jury duty that they missed, or the warrant, whatever it is. And so that's a really popular one that's happened. We've received 6 complaints about that specific scam within the past couple of weeks, and they were all within a couple of days of each other. We also have the ongoing scam where people receive a call from an Amazon representative to ask them if they have made a charge for usually a cell phone on their Amazon account. So you'll hit 1 to speak to someone in regards to your Amazon account, and then they'll ask for your biographical information and then the money for that to get rid of that charge.
Mary, how difficult is it for you all to investigate these type crimes compared to others? What's that like?
So a lot of these times they're asking for money transfers. With the rental scam, we have the person is asking for Zelle transfers, and Zelle is just a popular electronic money sharing app through your bank. In the jury duty type scams, we're usually seeing people ask for gift cards, and we can track the money. So we send subpoenas out to the financial institutions, and they can show us exactly where your money has gone to.
Now, these scams are different in many ways in terms of how we investigate them and look at those. What kind of advice are we giving to folks out in our community about these type scams? Are we doing anything on radio or doing any flyers out in the communities? Or exactly how are we trying to reach our citizens out there?
Yeah, I mean, this segment has been,
Other than this show,
it's been great. But we make regular posts on our Facebook page about it. I know that we have a Twitter account, and I believe we have an Instagram account.
All right, all right.
And so we're all the time posting updates about how to protect yourselves and what to look out for and current trends that we're seeing to try and get the information out to everybody.
Now, if there's someone out there listening and they want to know what should they do not to become a victim of a scam, what kind of advice can we give them?
If someone calls you and says they're going to renew your subscription to, say, Microsoft or McAfee virus protection, and you know that you don't have that, that's a scam. That's a huge red flag. If someone calls and pretends to be law enforcement, you can question them. What is your badge number? What's your sergeant's number? What's your department phone number? And they should have no problem identifying themselves or providing a badge number or an employee ID number to that person. And the moment that you start questioning them, they usually get angry and hang up. So if it's legitimate, they will provide you that information.
Telltale signs.
Right.
Mary, thank you so much for what you do. And
Thank you for having me.
Up next, we'll take you along as our cyclists from across the U.S., including one of our own, make their way to D.C. to honor the fallen. That's in our Deputy on Duty segment. Stay tuned.
In this week's Deputy on Duty, we travel more than 800 miles away to our nation's capital for the Police Unity Tour. It takes place in May of each year when thousands of cyclists from around the country gather during Police Week.
Round in turn 3 at Richmond. That was awesome.
There's a lot more that goes into it behind the scenes other than just hopping on a bike and going.
Their mission to help support the families of law enforcement officers who died in the line of duty, as well as raise money for the National Law Enforcement Memorial, which bears their names engraved in stone.
Those who have lost their lives in the line of duty are no longer here. So we're riding for them to honor their name, to keep their memory alive, and to show respect to them and their families.
Together, deputies from the Leon County Sheriff's Office, officers from the Tallahassee Police Department, and Florida Highway Patrol troopers all worked together for months to prepare.
There's a lot of fundraising that goes into getting us to this point. We ride over 3 days typically, upwards of 350 miles.
Each cyclist wears a bracelet commemorating a specific law enforcement officer who perished. For Deputy Wilmot, his commitment is personal. One of his bracelets bears the names of an LCSO deputy.
The reason I got into it was Chris Smith's death. Didn't own a bike at the time, but I felt like I needed to do something.
Deputy Chris Smith served with LCSO for 6 years before he died on November 22, 2014. He was shot and killed during an ambush.
To remember him and his sacrifice, his family's sacrifice, So the bracelet every year I always get is for him, and I give it back to the family every year, so they'll have a bracelet of every year to make sure they know that somebody's still riding and remembering him and sacrificing in a minor way compared to his sacrifice.
Deputy Smith was only 47 years old and left behind a wife, children, and other family members, including a big brother who is now a cyclist on the Unity Tour.
I train all year, but in May, it sort of resurfaces all these feelings, and it really makes me focus back on Chris and his life.
Smith says riding alongside law enforcement officers each year is like therapy, as the memories of his baby brother Chris continue to live on.
I'm out here suffering in the hills, and sometimes the cold, and oftentimes the rain, and I'm doing it for Chris. He doesn't get to enjoy and do anything anymore, and it just means a lot to me to come out here and do this in his honor. I think about him, pretty much the entire trip, but the final day going into the memorial is kind of the pinnacle of the thing.
Once you come to Washington, you see the wall, and you see that name on the wall, it signifies a body, and that's important and impactful. And I think every officer should at least strive to do something to remember fallen officers, whether it's this or something else, but through action.
Their actions and dedication truly paid off. LCSO deputies, in conjunction with the thousands of members and support personnel of the Police Unity Tour from all across the country, raised and donated approximately $2 million. It's to benefit the National Law Enforcement Memorial this year, and that's why they are this week's Deputy on Duty.
Welcome back to Leon County Today with Sheriff Walt McNeil and Sheriff the Unity Tour. First of all, just the stamina it takes to be able to cycle and the commitment that these cyclists have to be there in D.C. for such a great ceremony.
Yeah, this isn't just an event that takes place, at the moment. The folks that are engaged in these bike rides, these cyclists, this is a year-round commitment that they make to being a part of the National Memorial Service, and to get on those bikes and start like here with our deputies starting in Tallahassee and going all the way to Washington, D.C. It speaks volumes to their commitment and their dedication to our profession. And it also speaks to that we do not take for granted the person that gave their last, their devotion to our country and to our communities. And police officers, deputies all over the country are engaged in that endeavor. And I hope our citizens here in Tallahassee County can appreciate the dedication that they have and the commitment they have to serving, and in many cases giving their lives in service to our communities.
Yeah, we have deputies whose names are on that wall, and you go down to or go up to participate in this event. What is it like being there with those families?
Well, I tell you, I lost my first officer, Dale Green, in the 80s, and I'll tell you, it brings it all back. It never goes away.
Yeah.
And again, it speaks to the commitment of our profession, the folks that do this every day. And each day they put on that uniform, they know the possibility is they won't come back. And I applaud anyone that's in law enforcement, and I certainly applaud the citizens of our community that support the jobs that we do each and every day. So thank you, Tallahassee County.
Thank you indeed, and that's going to do it for today's episode. We hope you'll be back here next week.